I'm Larkin Seiple, and I'm on Cinepod.
The following podcast contains explicit language. You're listening to the Cinematography podcast presented by Hot Rod Cameras, a program about the art, craft, and philosophy of the moving image and the people who make it happen. Coming to you from the world headquarters of Hot Rod Cameras in Hollywood, California, are your hosts, Ben Rock and Ilya Friedman.
Hey, Ilya Friedman, what is up?
Oh man, it's time for another fine episode of the Cinematography podcast. Who is on the show today?
Oh my God, it's returning champion Larkin Seiple. So excited. You and I were together the second time I saw and the first time you saw Weapons. By the way, I went back for a third time.
I had no doubt. I knew you'd see it again.
Well, I went after we talked to him, and then I was like, God damn it! There's so many things I wish I would have asked him. But yeah, Larkin Seiple, fine cinematographer of little movies like Everything Everywhere All at Once, and TV series like Beef.
Exactly. Yeah, just little things like that.
one of our finest working cinematographers today, and who shot Weapons, which is definitely on my list of my favorite movies of the year. And when I went back and saw it, by the way, this is spoiler free, but I had seen homages to things like The Shining. I noticed an homage to what I think was Night of the Living Dead, and another homage to what I think was Evil Dead. And maybe next time we talk to Larkin, I'll ask him about that. But Larkin is just a phenomenal guy. Great. He's fun to interview. He has so much insight into what he does. I'll never, when I went back and watched it again, I was thinking about the sequence he was talking about where they had to shoot like 10 shots in an hour and a half.
Yeah, it was a great conversation, and everyone is about to hear it. So you and I should not, put the cart before the horse or give away all the milk from this cow. Let's let it. I'm mixing some metaphors here. I knew
nothing better than a mixed metaphor. I will not let the inmates run this hen house. Go on.
I appreciate you doing that. So. Here's the thing. We should get to our close focus, which is sort of a topical thing that is what we have to yak about because it's what's happening in the industry right now. Ben, what's our close focus?
And now, close focus.
Well, it's an article that you came across that has to do with it's Pinewood Studios. I think to this day one of the largest studio complexes in the world. And
in
they
the world,
have created
for sure.
an indie hub, which
yeah.
When I think indie filmmaking, my brain doesn't immediately go to Pinewood Studios. So good on Pinewood Studios for doing this. And we can link to the article, but it's through the BFI and which is the British Film Institute. And the thing that kind of tripped both of us up the most when we started looking into this was that it had to get a cultural score in order to pass. And so there's like a cultural content breakdown, and both of us were like, what does that mean? And it appears to just mean they want to tell stories with British people about British people that take place in England. So we're not going to England and dressing it up to look like New York and making Eyes Wide Shut Part 2 with American characters in England. We're telling The Full Monty. The Full Monty is a movie that would be a very British story with British characters set in.
We should be a little bit more specific, though, because it's not exactly fair, because it doesn't have to entirely be about British people. It doesn't entirely have to take place in England. It doesn't even have to have all of the production work done in England. They've essentially got a sliding scale. They've got this point system, which allows you to apply a certain number of points to each of these different things. Main characters being British, 50% or more of the VFX work taking place inside the UK, things like that. And it all adds up. And if you hit a preponderance of points on this 35-point scale, you win. 18 of 35 points, you get the tax credit. So Pinewood Studios has this new indie hub, and the indie hub is doing reduced rates for indie productions, and there's sort of a budget whole facility, and there's budgetary caps. It's like if you are at a certain level, under a certain level, you qualify to use it. And then you can get additional essentially discounts, rebates, credits from the British government, depending then on how you fall on this scale. It's slightly complicated, but let me tell you, good producers out there, not afraid of complexity. What goes on in Georgia and the tax incentives that go on all around the world requires people to, you have to jump through some hoops. So, but what you're really talking about is maximizing budget. You're talking about, governments saying, we like that you are bringing jobs here. We like that you are doing your business here. You add to our tax base. You add employment to our citizenry. Please come here. And when you do that and you jump through their hoops, you essentially can turn what maybe is let's say a 15 million pound budget into a 30 million pound budget, which is nothing to sneeze at because your dollars just go so much further. Here in Oregon, they have got a really cool one where you actually don't have to jump through so many hoops. You're qualified, you show them the receipts, and then they just write you a check, which I think is awesome. And
because
that's
it's Oregon, do you have to put a picture of a bird on the contract or something? Do you have to do something kind of twee? Do you have to play a tuba? Do you have to come in stilts? Sorry.
There is no 18-point Oregonian scale that you have to adhere to in order to get the credits. It's actually really simple. I have to say, the reason I'm shouting it out is just because I was shocked at how simple it is. Basically, any dollars that you spend here, you get 25% back, and they just write you a check, which if they did that other places, I think Oregon basically said, we're just going to and I know we're here to not talk about this, but I just as an example, they're kind of doing something really right that I would say that indie people should be really paying attention to, because if you don't want to jump through a bunch of hoops, which most places, if you want to maximize your dollars back, there's usually a hoop or two. Same thing with this new Pinewood studio to get the maximum dollars back. But that being said, it sounds pretty straightforward, and there is this production that's already signed on. It's going to be the first, October 30th. It sounds like anyone can sign up for this, but it's an Angelina Jolie.
Anyone in the UK. I mean, you and I might encounter some roadblocks.
Well, yes, but I think like I said, if you are reaching those scales, if you're reaching the hurdles, I don't know if this is necessarily. This is an Angelina Jolie, Amy Lou Wood, Jason Segel movie called Anxious People. It's called Anxious People. So yeah, that's the first one. We'll put a link to it in the show notes over at Cam Noir if you guys want to read about it. But I think it's interesting and also quite telling that, certain governments and certain administrations want to attract movie production.
Well, England has been a big mover in terms of getting production, and they've actually been siphoning production from Atlanta. Because the tax incentives in the UK are pretty substantial and pretty appealing, even to big budget productions.
Yeah, I've heard that Marvel has all but left Atlanta for the UK, which is got to be pretty stingy for some of the facilities and people who've been working in Atlanta the last few years.
Oof. Anyway, but I think what's cool though is that I feel like England has always been, or the UK, I should say, has always been supportive of indie productions. A lot of great indie productions have always come out of there, and great filmmakers consequently have come out of the UK. So I think it's cool that they're putting their money where their mouth is, and they're going out of their way to support indie stuff, because right now it's not exactly a high watermark for indie filmmaking, which isn't to say the indie films getting made aren't great. It's to say that it's probably harder than it ever has been, in my knowledge, to get an indie film off the ground.
Yeah, but I think that we might be on the verge of a renaissance. I hear more and more rumblings and a lot of people really paying attention and looking to alternative ways of both production and distribution. So, we might be on the verge of a renaissance. I think it's interesting that Pinewood and the UK government are investing, at least ostensibly in a real serious boon to indie producers. So let's see if some people follow suit. Maybe we'll get some more here in California.
Any of our UK listeners, check it out. Go make a film.
Yeah, actually, UK listeners are our number 2 demographic. I think it probably has something to do with this, we kind of speak English. So maybe, the English-speaking world, listens to us. So anyway, Ben.
Go get it, UK.
Go get it. Let's get to the interview with Larkin Seiple.
Here we go.
The Cinematography Podcast Interview.
Well, thanks, Larkin, so much for coming on the show. I went and saw, I wasn't able to go see Weapons opening night, but I saw it second night. I was a huge fan of Barbarian. And but I didn't see it in the theater because I think it was the middle of the pandemic and I had a little kid, yada, yada, yada. And so I was very excited. The trailer looked awesome and went to see it and was blown away both by, I mean, the movie's just amazing, but also just like being in a cramped theater, like not one empty seat and the audience freaking out at every move. And then I told Ilya about it and he happened to be in LA the following week, this past Friday, and we went and saw it. So I've seen it on the big screen twice. And the second time was better in a way because, I mean, I loved it both times, but I could see the plot mechanics working, but also I could, I knew when to pay attention to the audience, if you know what I mean.
I do that too.
Yeah.
I think I've seen it 4 times in theaters now, and I always start to peek over my shoulder at about 4 or 5 different scenes.
Yeah, it's fun. Well, yeah. Well, like let's just start with what brought you to this project. You know, it's a mystery film that ends as a horror film, and that's kind of like people are like, "Is it going to be super disgusting?" And I'm like, it has its moments, but it's mostly a mystery film. Actually, a good friend of mine is Jason Collins, who did your special effects makeup.
Oh, he killed it. He's wonderful.
Yeah, Jason's the best. And but what brought you to it? Because you know, have you done like kind of a straight up horror film like this in the past?
I haven't done a horror film before, anything really close to it. I don't even know if I'd done a jump scare before. But what Zach kind of out of the blue sent me the script, and I was kind of shocked because I was like, "Oh, this isn't something I normally do." And I read it, and I read it very quickly. That's the fun about reading mysteries, is you're very anxious to find the answer, but also it was such a journey to get from like the beginning to the end, and I was just kind of fascinated where it was going to end up. At one point I kind of forgot about the mystery and was just like, this cop is making terrible life choices, what is he doing? It's like the most fun I've had reading a script in a really long time, you know. And then very next day I read it for a second time, and I had just finished another film and I was planning on just taking a little break just to, you know, be a normal human being. And then I kind of had to do it. I met Zach for coffee and we just kind of clicked. And even at coffee, we're starting to brainstorm different ways to execute different scenes, different, you know, ideas for characters visually. And Zach himself has a million ideas in his head. A lot of like the great moments are kind of written into the script.
Mm-hmm.
And it was very clear that Zach was just a really solid director and someone that's kind of just born to make movies. And before the meeting, I hadn't seen Barbarian because I'm very empathetic, and it's hard for me to watch horror movies. I care too much, and it's like very stressful. And so I watched Barbarian like at 10 a.m., like the lights on. And in the first 5 minutes, I could instantly tell that Zach knew what he was doing. I was like, oh, we are being guided very specifically into this story and being visually shown what is important and what to not care about. And he just built intrigue right off the bat just from the camera work. And I was excited. I was like, if this is what he's doing with Barbarian, then I'm very curious to see what he wants to do with weapons.
Well, and I feel like this was Barbarian has, I think, one of the all-time greatest misdirects just in casting in the opening scene by having, you know, the guy who played Pennywise be super menacing, and then he's not the problem at all. But spoiler alert for people who haven't seen Barbarian. But what I appreciate about both films is that it's like, how often does it happen to you where you're watching a movie in a theater and you have no earthly idea where this could be going? Like, just like all of my ability to be like, oh yeah, this old trope. There's no this old trope in this movie. I had no idea where it was going right to the very end. And I'm just kind of curious, like coming at it from a cinematography standpoint, from a lensing, from camera placement, from, you know, all the things that are, you know, kind of in your purview. Like how do you, I mean, are you just following the script, or are you saying like, yeah, we want to create a sense of, there was a sense throughout the whole movie of like, if I could just move this far over to the right, I could see the thing that this is all about that no one's saying out loud. Like, is there something that you're doing to kind of hold us in that kind of a mystery?
I don't know. No, when we approached it, when me and Zach, we started shotlisting over Zoom or in person for a month or two, which is my favorite part of the process. There's no storyboards. You're in the room and you get to act it out, but that's when you get to like dream. And, Zach will be like, I see it this way. And I was like, oh, that's great. I saw it this way. And maybe he'll take one of my ideas, or it'll encourage him to be like, oh, actually, let's change my idea and push it further. And that becomes more elaborate, obviously, once you start building the sets and stages.
Yeah.
Like we were on set, and there's a scene where Alex runs in his room from his parents into the bathroom. And as we were blocking it out, I was like, yeah, and then the camera just, goes through the wall. Now we're in the bathroom. And Zach's like, yes. And I was like, I was kidding. And so now we're pulling a wall and bringing in a decking and adding, a dolly shot to it. And he would just take something that worked or sounded exciting or made something better and just throw it in there. And that was a lot of the process. There was a real energy in terms of building it. But the shot structure was always the most interesting part from the get-go. And Zach's approach was he wanted to be really brutal about coverage. Like you'll notice, like when Justine gets in her car, she opens her door and she's at the next location. There's no shoe leather can help it. We just hard cut and try to move the story along as quickly as possible. And that mantra was really exciting because we started applying that to all the different characters and stories. Like, how much does the audience need to understand this bit unless there's something specific to the character? Like usually we don't do establishing shots if we can help it, except for like an Austin's chapter when we need to see that he's waiting outside of the pawn shop to open because he's that desperate. Things like that. And that's how we kind of started defining it. And then once that process kind of evolved and we had like a clear idea of like how it was going to cut, we started playing with visual themes, like the paranoia behind Julia's character and like the hunter aspect of Archer, who's kind of on this path to figure out where his child disappeared, and started dropping in these little kind of influences. Or Alden's chapter, who plays the police officer, he's very passive, like life is kind of happening around him. We talked about trying to get a lot of profile angles on him where the whole world's kind of moving and he's just kind of like a rock in the river, not really just reacting. It was like it's one of the most fulfilling creative processes I've had on a film.
Hey, Larkin, I want to talk a little bit about the look of this movie. It's a great look. It's contrasty. It's colorful. There's lots of stylization with angles and a movement. Tell us about how you went about building this look.
I don't know. It's kind of a tricky look to build. Just talking to Zach about it, you have multiple characters. They all have their different viewpoints. You have the sense of the town. You're following a child for one of them. We ultimately wanted to find a look that kind of enhanced the scenery and the mood, which is something very melancholy and kind of there's a sense of something evil happening and the sense of frustration. When I first asked Zach, he referenced Prisoners, and there was less that he wanted it to look like Prisoners. And to me, it was more like he wanted to feel as mournful and dreary. And we originally were supposed to shoot it in winter. And so we're like, great, we'll do what Prisoners did. We'll just only shoot when it's overcast, and then our schedule pushed and there was a strike. And then we're shooting it in the middle of summer, guaranteed.
In Georgia too.
So that kind of, that whole concept kind of went out the window, and we were like, well, how do we create that? And so we did a lot with blocking and trying to find trees, but we spent a long time building the look for it. It started with picking the lenses. I brought Zach to Keslow Camera, and I showed him probably between 10 to 20 different lenses. We were talking about shooting spherical because we wanted to do reframing in post. And I showed him, I remember we went through like 5 or 8 spherical lenses in a row, and he was like, these are all cool and you talk about them with real passion. I cannot tell the difference between these lenses. Maybe subtly, but I generally can't help you. So I showed him some anamorphics, and he was like, oh, they're too much. Like, I can feel the bending, and it just feels like we're trying too hard. And then just kind of randomly, I threw on a master anamorphic, and he was like, well, what's that? And I was like, that's it's this type of lens. And he was like, well, that looks like a movie, whatever that is, which is bizarrely, the master anamorphics are anamorphics that kind of look spherical. They're like really, they're like, master primes is a better bokeh and distortion, or no distortion, I should say. And that's where we found that part of it. And then we went to figure out the LUT for it, which is the big part of my process, because I like to make a LUT for every movie, like kind of starting from scratch. We went to the house of all the stand-ins for each actor, and we kind of just did like a moody shoot. We shot them in the kitchen. We shot them on couches lit by windows. We shot them in doorways. We shot them in the grass and dappled light. And we also shot the Alexa 35 against 35 mil film as well. Because I always want to have that conversation of like, what do we love about film? What do we hate about digital? How do we bridge the gap? And we took all that footage and went and projected it in theaters with our colorist, Alex Bickle, who was in New York. And we were in Atlanta. And we slowly started picking apart what we liked about film. We liked the softer highlights. We liked the way skin looked, the sense of blood and like actually seeing the gradation of color in the skin as opposed to like a very saturated skin tone. We really wanted to see, it go from blush to pink to peach to orange, things like that. And so we started kind of playing around. And this is the first movie where we combined LUTs to make a look. We took a LUT based on 5293, which is like an old Kodak stock. It's a stock they shot Terminator on or Amadeus.
It's a great stock.
And it had a nice look.
Yeah.
And as I was playing with Alex, I don't like to reference movies as much as feeling. And so I started looking at paintings, and there's a painter named George Bellows, and he does these very melancholic, landscapes in bright sun specifically, and night sequences. And he had this one called Summer Night, Riverside Drive, and that kind of felt like what I wanted the opening montage of the kids to feel like. There's like a weird glow, and there's something greenish to it and warm, and it felt dramatic, and then we were talking about the horror side of it, and I think people have probably done this many times in the past, but Francis Bacon has these very iconic paintings that just kind of feel vile and malicious and evil, and there's so much rage and anger in there, but it's expressed with like rich purples and blues and reds and greens, and that kind of brought the mouth. So we started talking about that, and that's when Alex was like, well, I don't think one stock is the choice. Let's combine something. And so trying to get this more muted black, we took Premiere, which is another stock made more popular in the 90s or late 90s, early 2000s, and we put that on top to try to soften the highlights. And then to try to give it a little more edge, we did like what's ENR process, which was like a version of bleach bypass, but more controlled. And it was kind of fun to actually call it these things. It's just zeros and ones in the end, all changing contrast ratios. But it felt, romantic. And we finally slapped it on, and we were like, hey, this feels kind of what we've been talking about. There's a malice to it. There's something evil, but the skin is also not like a strong Kodak look. It's kind of downplayed, and it felt more melancholy. And that's how we kind of found that. And we didn't change the look too much from the LUT on set. A lot of it was just shaping, and it was that process to me is exciting. And Zach we kept showing him the different tests and where we landed up, and he was like, this feels great. And this also works with the sunlight, because there's sunlight all over this thing. It was a fun process, and I think that is what kind of helps give the film that tone that people can kind of feel when they watch it, is there is something brewing and something is off. It's
a really nice tone, and it, even though I knew it was shot in Georgia, it didn't feel like Georgia sunshine to me at all. It definitely felt like the color of light that was striking everything was different, which
I know Jason had mentioned that they'd shot it in Georgia, and when I saw it, I was like, this looks more like Portland or something.
We were aiming for Cincinnati, I believe, if that's my memory is right. We actually scouted Cincinnati, and I think Zach found all the locations on the one day he scouted there. And we just couldn't do it. We couldn't get the tax credit, or there was a couple other variables, but so we had to make Georgia work, which was more cumbersome to try to find, the Midwest or Pennsylvania in Georgia, because the different time periods and neighborhoods. We actually started location scouting based on when neighborhoods were built, to try to find, a house that was 2 stories but didn't have a split staircase, that had this type of lawn, that wasn't on a hill. It was very fun to find Alex's house. We looked at, I don't know, 100, 150 houses. Was
there any part of that look that was done optically besides the lens? Did you, or was all of the softening the highlights and all of that? Was there any filter? Yeah.
The only softening is really in Austin's chapter, James. We switched to K35s for his chapter, which was the more vintage lens. And I like the idea of when people are on drugs, I like something feeling sharp and soft at the same time. And so there's a glowier highlight. And the sides are a bit more vignetted. It just felt a little more to his character, and it felt like there was more of like a view to his world. Like it wasn't as clean and undistorted as everyone else. There's something off, and we wanted the audience to kind of feel that, especially when the camera pans, when we're in cramped spaces. We wanted those lenses to kind of say something.
I really appreciate, I feel like the masterful bits of subtlety, because I mean, it's really easy to make the shots that really stand out, but so many of the shots in this movie, they flow visually so well from one to another. And there's just these little moments, these little bit of adjustments that exactly as Ben's described, like, you know, you want to see more, you want to see a little bit. And it's a little on the nose, and I'm going to call it out specifically, but anyone who was paying attention totally gets the idea of the paint and the red paint and the witch pretty early. But then, and so as not to give it away, you make this slight adjustment to the back of the truck. It's like just this one perfect little like underline for the people who in the audience that weren't paying attention that like sells the story and gets it across. Can you talk a little bit about those small, you know, subtle moves that really change, you know, understanding and really change the feeling of a scene?
Yeah, I mean, one of my favorite ones is when we were shooting a scene where Julia's character is confronting Alex in front of his house, and she just stops him and she's trying to talk to him. And she's standing up, and it's a normal shot. And then she crouches down, and the camera tilts with her to reveal witch written on her car.
Yeah.
And the audience laughs. Like, that's actually, like, that was never supposed to be a joke, but these little moments like that are something that we didn't quite talk about. But I mean, the paint at the end of the car, that scene is written to show the audience. It's written to show. I mean, it's just basically a very elaborate insert. We tried to like that shot and that sequence is just to be like, Archer did it for those who weren't paying attention. But earlier on, when he closes the liftgate of his truck and he has the paint in it, like the clever viewer will be like, oh, that clearly this is what's going to happen next. To a point where you could almost cut the scene of Archer going to her house and watching her. If it wasn't a part of the narrative.
Yeah, it's really fun. I just feel like there's so many of those. I feel like I seem to recall one too also when there's like the salt on the floor at the end, and we kind of have like a tracking shot a little bit with like shoes, and then you just see like this little adjustment for like the impending doom of this salt barricade. There's so many spots. It feels like in the movie to me of like these just like, oh, I got a little bit more information, and now I know what's going to happen next. I know that there is like, you know, something new that's about to happen. Is a lot of that found on the day? I mean, I understand the paint in the back of the truck, but you know, it was in the script. But how do you guys go about making these little adjustments?
I mean, almost all of it is in the script. It's all, you know, like Julia's foot about to cross the salt and we boom down and see it. It was more like the choices of when Josh Brolin's character was walking into the house at the end and he looks down and he sees the salt. It was Zach's choice to not cut to an insert of the salt. You're like, wait, he sees something. What is it? And then you cut to Julia and the camera booms down to reveal her foot is about to cross the line of salt, right as Josh yells, stop. Mm-hmm. It's all in there. I mean, a lot of it, we weren't really adding too much to it on the day. The movie was so difficult to make because I'm not kidding, I think 249 scenes, maybe probably more. And you're averaging 6 to 8 scenes a day, which is a lot harder than just doing like 5 pages a day or even 7 pages a day, because, you know, 7-page scene, you kind of light it, you block it, and then you just shoot it out. With 6 to 8 scenes a day, you're relighting and reblocking 6 to 8 times and trying to do it as quickly as possible. And a lot of that too, I think, affected the visual language when we were like, we have so much work to do. It'd be a lot simpler if we found ways to do a lot of it in one shot or two. And just to make our days. And it was always the goal to have, again, very little coverage, but it also helped our schedule because it was a very ambitious approach to the shoot. And you're working with child actors that, you know, turn to pumpkins after 6 hours. So a lot of that was just, you know, a lot of weekends I spent with our first AD just scheduling, because we had photo boarded the entire movie in prep. I mean, every single frame of the film is on my iPhone.
Really?
With our AD and Zach's assistant,
like
Zach,
stills or video?
Stills, like every single frame. There is no frame we didn't shoot, just so that when we knew when we started shooting it, there was no questions on set, and it was really designed for the actors to have room to play around and like evolve their performance, or for Zach to do as many takes as he wanted. There was no problem solving on the day, which was very laborious, and that was the majority of our prep, was just figuring out how to do it visually, so that we could try to actually make the film in a competent manner.
How much time did you spend photoboarding the whole thing?
We had about 2 months of prep, and the majority of that was photoboarding and location scouting. And if we found a location we wanted, we would quickly pull over and call off the rest of the day and finish photoboarding that set and kind of go through it. And that's also the place where we get to play with ideas, and we'd also figure out our photo boards didn't work because the alley was too small or the distance was too big.
Yeah.
The light wasn't going to work. Photoboarding also forces you to do all the problem solving because you're there, as opposed to like storyboarding, which is very cute. Being on the ground and being on the location, you actually get to see what you're up against.
Yeah.
These businesses have to close. Oh, we're going to be in shade for half the day and sun the other half. This isn't going to work for continuity. A slew of different problems arise, and that kind of helps you navigate it. And you're like, oh, we'll jump across the street. Actually, we'll shoot it over here. This has better sun path. Things like that.
Horizontal tracking. I can't think horizontal. Actually, I should say x-axis and y-axis. You've got a lot of movement in this. A lot of.
You also have a lot of like pivoting around a central subject, like a circling shot where the background is just a swirl behind them.
Every one of them.
Chapter.
Yeah. I was just saying, every one of these shots I think of is motivated though too. There's nothing that's unmotivated. It's not a gratuitous motion to move. There's always people moving. You're following feet. You're following people. But it's so engaging to get you from one place to another. I was trying to think of another movie that I've seen recently that had that much motivated motion that every single one felt like we know exactly where we're going and we know exactly where we've come from. It felt so nicely together. I don't know, again, if this is the magic of editing or if this is the magic of the script or maybe something else, but can you talk a little bit about the movement?
Yeah. I mean, we movement was a theme. Like every chapter starts from the back of a character, and then the camera sometimes wraps around them, sometimes sits and stays, but it does something. Like for Josh's chapter and Julia's chapter and Alden's chapter, it starts from behind and wraps into a profile. Austin's chapter, we stay with him because he's in a tent. And Alex's chapter, we really just stay on the back of his head because we want the audience to think about what's coming next. Mm-hmm. And Julia also happens to be saying something about parasites in the background, which, we're starting to imply something is brewing. We started there, and then the other reason the camera moves is we wanted to stay with the characters. A lot of it is you are with them. You want to feel their journey, and so because as opposed to like a more God's eye type of view, we wanted to just be in it, and so that meant we had to move the camera as much of it was less of a choice, more like no, that we want to stay with them. It's also the movie is long; it's 2.5 hours.
Doesn't feel like it.
And there's a lot of information, and we wanted to have it kind of, speed along, but it does slow down, like Josh's chapter, because he's kind of isolated and he's very much depressed and hiding or trying to, his life's falling apart. It's very static for a lot of it. And we're just kind of watching him kind of brew and process. But then as things pick up, the camera starts to move, when he goes to Justin Long's house and uses his little laser pointer, we started adding these pans and these dolly moves to kind of enhance his excitement and like bring out the joy he's having and that he's actually got a shot at finding his son.
Well, there's so much punctuation of action and excitement in it too. I'm thinking of like Benedict Wong's,
oh my God,
scene stealing. He doesn't have to say a word, but every scene that he's in during, I don't want to give a single spoiler to this movie. And I think that we're all doing a good job of being very conscious of this too. Because every single part of this movie, it's like, Ben said to me, go in dark, know as little as possible. And I did. I saw no trailers. I went in completely dark. And I agree. That is the way to experience this.
I know. A friend of mine was like, is this like some kind of M. Night Shyamalan thing where there's a big twist? And I was like, not really, but it's so spoilable. And I just want you to like Superman, spoil away. Like, I'm interested to see it. Like, it's all cool, but like this movie is such a delicious mystery for so much of it that just unfolds in like tiny little dribs and drabs. And one of the things that I appreciated that you guys did was you had me constantly watching the background of stuff. and there's one scene in particular when Julia Garner is followed by June Diane Raphael into the liquor store. And at first you just think it's just a person in the background. You don't know, but she's wearing like orange or red or something. It draws your eye just enough that you're like, okay, that could just be an extra, but like you kept like, you're staying on Julia Garner and like, she'd be just out of the frame and then she'd come back into the frame. And it was like this crazy chase thing, that again does pay off, and it pays off, with
time.
like a big confrontation. Again, I don't want to get all spoilery, but like looking at that, like, like what was the construction of that moment, and how much were you aware of like how you were tantalizing us with stuff in the background throughout the whole movie?
I mean, that's in the script. I mean, the script is incredibly well written and very clear. Normally, I don't enjoy scripts that really paint the picture of what the camera's doing. It can get clunky. But this one, it's written in a thrilling manner, because a lot of times if there's camera direction, it's because it's going to inform the reader that something's coming or brewing, or to change their mindset about how they view the sequence. And so the first time Julia goes to the liquor store is also a one-er from her car outside into all the window, and that's from behind, so that the audience understands each turn of the liquor store. And then when we do it again, when Donna shows up, it's the same shot, but now it's from the front, and it's the exact same. And so it's the idea of like, you're familiar with this, but you're asking the audience to notice what's different. And, putting Donna in red. I mean, one of the audiences, I think the first time Donna appeared, just the intensity of her approaching the door, the person next to me was like, like they knew something was coming. And we timed it out. I have a lot of videos of Zach in the liquor store following our producer Miri, like panning around, figuring out if this has enough twists and turns to hide Donna in the background just by a little bit each time. I mean, it was just a great idea in the script, and we just tried to execute as best we could. We had an amazing Steadicam operator named Michael Fuchs, who did about 98% of all of the camera work in the film.
Oh, wow.
And he's phenomenal. And he was the only person I brought to Atlanta to do the movie, because I needed someone. I called Mike and I was like, this movie is practically all camera moves. Like it is, you are going to have your work cut out for you. And we used, 4 different types of stabilized heads and different types of tracking vehicles and motorcycles and ATVs, all because the camera needs to go all these places. Like, how do you pull a bunch of kids in a backyard paging and then into like a narrow fence? It's like, you get like a remote head on the back of a very narrow motorcycle, and you find someone that's willing to let you drive a motorcycle in their backyard.
Naturally.
Yeah, things like that. And it was a very fun challenge technically as well.
Wow.
All right. Well, this movie is fun, and you've already talked about reading the script and being delighted and getting along well with Zach. I mean, was making the movie as much fun as it was to read? I mean, it sounds like it was a difficult shoot. It sounds like you had some times, but was there some levity amongst all of the toiling? How did the actual shoot process go?
I mean, I think anything that's good is hard to make. And this was a very hard film because it was, just from a scheduling standpoint, this is the most I've been involved in scheduling a film and location scouting in a film. And I think that's what makes great cinematography, is finding great locations and then scheduling them appropriately. So you have either enough time to light them or they time them so it's the right time of day. But I really fought to try to get locations that worked for multiple reasons. And then I also fought just to make sure the schedule was functional. And then a lot of days we had to move really fast. We had our B camera team always leapfrogging. So I was very stressed out while I was making it. But we had the actors were really excited to make the movie, and they all loved their characters. So a lot of times we would have to be like, we have to move on, guys. Like, they would always ask for more takes because they were having such a good time making it. And Zach is amazing with actors as well. and he's practically performing with them on the way he gives notes. He gets excited, and it's very playful. And the actors also all hung out on set. It wasn't like one of those big movies where everyone goes to their trailer and you got to call them and give a 10-minute warning. It's like, no, they're all hanging out. Josh would be like, I'm just going to nap on the couch. You just tap my shoulder when my scene's up, but I don't want to hide. I want to be a part of this. Austin, who's in, a third of the movie, was on set for, I think, half the time we were there just because he wanted to watch and be a part of it. It was just a very pleasant experience.
I mean, I think the cliche is often that like comedies are the most serious sets, and horror movies are where more people laugh at stuff than anything else. But I think it's just because it's all you got when you're like dealing with all the gross stuff. It's not a super gory film, but it's like, it's just like you can't walk around in that intense moment, in that intense headspace all day long.
There's some black vomit. Yeah, there's some stuff.
There's some mutilation. There's definitely.
Oh no, it gets there. No, it totally gets. And when it gets, I texted Jason like on the way out of the theater, and I was like, holy crap. And also like when I saw it the first time, I didn't know you'd shot it, and when your name came up, I was like, yes, god damn it, that's so cool. But I do have a question too. There's like a lot of nighttime scenes, and you made night look like real night, in my opinion. Like, it feels like you're in a small town outside or in a house in the dark. It doesn't feel like there's nothing wrong with lighting night to look like stylized night, but it felt like real dark. Like the only comparison I could give it would be like David Lynch Lost Highway, where the dark felt foreboding and scary, and like I can't see everything that's in it. Like a lot of times in a movie, night is like I can still see everything like it's daytime. It's just bluer and lower key. But this just feels dark. What were your strategies for making night look so dark? I was even wondering if some of it might have been day for night, but I'm not sure.
No, we didn't do any day for night. I mean, the biggest challenge of night was we had a ton of sequences of kids running in big urban environments.
Yeah.
And that all had to be, we didn't have the schedule for it. So we ended up having a second unit set up the night sequences, and I would finish first unit, and then I would go jump on second unit for 4 more hours.
Oh, wow.
And we didn't have a lot of time, and our resources were not vast. So we were able to have like a condor with a light for a shot. And then we had to find houses that were kind of in the vicinity of the condor base and pick our frames based around what we could execute. And to be even more resourceful, we would lower the condor and mount a camera on top of it and raise it back up. And that's where you get all those high and wide shots.
Oh, nice.
And those we didn't scout. We'd go and we'd light it and we'd shoot the first couple of shots, and we'd put the camera up and hoped we get lucky. Hoped we would find an interesting background. And some of them made it into the opening montage of the film. But in general, it was really just adding practicals. Sometimes we were able to have the condor do a wash for some of them, but a lot of times we're just finding locations that had enough light and kind of getting out of the way. I mean, some of them are very dark.
Well, like, what about also the interiors? And also there's, again, not to spoil anything, but there's a house that has like newspapers or something on all the windows, and it's just day or night dark in this house whenever we're in there. Like, talk about how you created kind of that atmosphere. And in that particular house also, we see it when it's not like that, and it had to be recognizably the same place.
The house was all built on stage, the interior of the house. We found the house exterior that we liked that fulfilled all of the demographics, or the needs of the script, in terms of it's at the cul-de-sac. It had to be able to have a long view of a street to see the kids running down. It had to, we needed a dead end for the cop car. And we built each floor as its own set with like a fake staircase, and we built the basement as well. And the look we wanted was kind of how, Zach described. It should be dark and moody. And even in the grade, Zach's the first director I've had that pushed me to go darker. I
really
was subtly bringing things up so we could see a little more performance or something. And Zach was like, no, darker. I don't want them to know. I want them to be afraid.
Don't say that out loud. Every DP is going to want to work with them then, because it's usually like, oh, can we add more light? Can you put it more frontal? It's like, yeah. Oh, that's fantastic.
You spent a very long time going back and darkening sequences. But I mean, the trick to the look for those sequences was knowing that we wanted it dark and that we wanted it moody. And so we basically built in a lot more windows than there were. so that we could have the characters be silhouetted and to have more sources coming in. There's not a lot of lighting on set. We would occasionally add like a soft key hidden off camera to pump it up, but we never pulled the roof and had lights above set like you'd see like in a classic film. It was very much just coming from the windows. And all the windows, they're all soft boxes outside of each window. So we were constantly, if a window wasn't in shot, we would bring that window up to push deeper into the room, or we'd bring in negative fill to kind of just add shape to the actors. But the other challenge too is if there's so much camera movement, there's not a lot of place to hide lights.
Yeah.
And so we had to kind of embrace letting it fall off, or creating blocking around the windows, so that way they could walk into a pool of light or walk out of it.
Given that you'd photo boarded the whole film, but also given that, there are scenes that have more of a sense of traditional coverage, but I think one of the things I love about this is that, and I noticed it a lot more watching it the second time, is that they're, and you've kind of hit on it. It's like scenes didn't feel covered. I didn't feel like we were bopping back and forth between the same two angles very often at all. It was usually like a shot will get us in and maybe we'll go back and forth and then another shot will take us out. A little bit like what Guillermo del Toro does in a lot of his films. Does that affect like how you go about creating like your lighting plan? Do you know, like, okay, well, we're coming in and we're shooting this side of the scene first, and then like I don't know. I'm supposing. You tell me.
Well, some of the scenes, there's like a bar scene with Alden and Julia's characters, and we got there and we had a day to shoot 5 pages, which felt very luxurious. And I was like, oh, I'm gonna take my time and actually, really make these close-ups perfect. And I don't want to cross shoot. Is that okay, Zach? And Zach's like, that's fine. And then we watch the rehearsal and he just looks at me like the rehearsal's over, and I just hold up 2 fingers and he just nods his head. We cross shot the whole sequence because their performances were great and they fed off each other. And there was he just didn't want to miss out on someone doing something great, because they were constantly changing and tweaking because that scene's a lot about subtleties, because you're learning their backstory by them not saying things. And so if you're on set, you'll notice they actually have eye lights the whole time, but there's literally, I don't know, a small army of Helioses, these small little fluorescent type lights that scour the floor around them just out of frame. Actually, in the movie I was watching, Julia raises her arm and you can see one of the Helioses for about a half second. It was tricky, but we kind of again designed it around the performance for those scenarios. We cross shot when we could. Just like we kind of cross shot when Alex is at the table with Gladys, because there's so many different eye lines between him and his parents and their hands and forks. We ended up doing a couple or 2 or 3 cameras for that sequence just to make our day with the child actor. But in general, no, we don't. We tried to just keep it simple. And if it's a dialogue scene, it's maybe 2 sizes.
Well, in that scene that you're talking about, where you have all those eye lines, and it's always interesting to see someone's approach to that. Like, what is your approach when you're doing? Is it everyone's eye line to the kid, and you shoot over the shoulders, or you shoot close-ups based on that eye line, or how do you plot out those scenes? Scenes with 3 people to me are sometimes the hardest to get right, because are you going to have like if 3 people individually talk to each other, are they each going to have their own eye line, and do you have time to even do that sometimes?
I mean, what made it tricky is that Alex is walking downstairs and he's over his dad's right, and then he sits, he's over his dad's left, and he looks at his father twice. Then he also looks like Gladys over his dad. Yeah, and he looks like Gladys when he sits down, and then it was basically, there's so many different angles of interest and depending on the character, we just kind of had to overcover it just so the scene could flow well. Eye lines are what kind of, if there's an eye line issue, something feels off. The audio is sometimes jarring for the audience. And so we wanted to make sure that sequence ran smooth. And so we just basically covered over dad's left, over dad's right, over Alex's left, over Alex's.
So you had to do every side. Oh man, that's a lot.
Yeah. So, but dad, we would do 2 cameras. We would do one on his left, one on his right.
Oh, okay.
Speed things up. Yeah. Okay. It was, and it was and it's a small house. We never really pulled walls. The only time we pulled walls is there's a scene where Julia is running from Alden at the end of the film, and she runs under a table. And so we had to pull the wall and swing a camera under the table as she crawls around it. I don't think anyone noticed is that, but we had to like basically pull all the legs from the table and hang it from the ceiling with wires. And then in post, we would add legs back.
Oh,
It
wow.
was just this floating table on set. But it's a quick moment, and I'm happy no one talks about how did you get the camera under the table, because it means that the shot.
Well, I feel like you did it earlier with her going underneath a car, and so we're just like, oh, I know how this person escapes from stuff.
That's a big cheat too. No one said that. That's we had. Gabe was our visual effects supervisor on set, and that scene stressed him out because you really can't fit a human under a car, especially not a psychopathic Benedict Wong under a car. And so we had to raise the car on blocks for that sequence and then shoot it and then lower it and put the tires back and do plates. But in the end, it ended up being digitally recreated tires to put the car up high enough. But again, it's a thrilling sequence. And if you're looking at the tires during that scene, like we've done something terribly wrong. There's no one paying attention to that. So again, there's a lot of visual effects used in this to just kind of make the shots work that blend in seamlessly that you're not supposed to.
No, it's great. I mean, I would say it's a perfect example of kind of invisible visual effects. There's only one VFX shot that I could really, if you would have asked me before we started, there's one shot I know is done with VFX, and it's obviously it's a thing hovering in the sky. So, you know, like how else were you going to do that?
Yes, that is VFX.
But like that, I mean, that scene also, which is sort of a dream sequence from Josh Brolin's character. Like the night feels like night when he's outside and it's dark and it's hard to make out details in the way that it would be if I was to like walk out into my backyard in the middle of the night looking for something. And it was one of those moments where I was just kind of in awe of how it feels completely naturalistic. It doesn't look like overcooked in the grate or anything like that. I buy it, but it feels like night in a way that most night scenes in movies don't.
Yeah, we talked about for Brolin's sequence and for Julia's sequence, never wanting like pure black and never wanting it to be hyper stylized in terms of dramatic lighting. Josh was actually, we kind of wanted it to be a very low ambient. So he wanted to be able to see the house and see the grass and the street and the trees because in his dream, you know, he runs back and he's in front of the same house he just ran from. We wanted it to feel eerie in a way, as opposed to trying to make it look scary. We wanted it to feel more ominous or creepy. You know, in Julia's dream sequence in the classroom, you know, that's actually day for night, if my memory serves right, because we had to shoot kids and we couldn't start that sequence at 9 p.m. at night in the summer. And so for that, we just softened everything and just underexposed it and let it go blue. But I mean, a lot of Zach's was trying to counter what you would think of as a classical nightmare sequence and trying to get something that was more in the character's headspace. The weird sense of being able to see everything, but something is wrong.
You know, countering that classical nightmare horror expectation is actually sort of a theme I felt that this movie plays into a lot. And I'm wondering if you guys discussed that or, you know, planned more about that, because the beginning with Justine sort of home alone and the doorbell, and it has almost like a Scream sort of feeling. It feels like, oh, I've seen this before, but the movie's so fresh, and so you're only a very short way into the movie. It almost feels like you're setting up me for something I've seen before, but it's not anything I've seen before. Yeah. And I'm wondering if that setup and payoff of like putting the audience in the situation of not knowing if you're going to turn left or turn right or what's going to happen next, how much of that is script? How much of that is execution? What's going on with that? Or is that just me reading a bunch of stuff into this?
No, I mean, I think, you know, that sequence is very specific in the script. You know, one of my favorite shots is the shot of the TV and Shark Tank's playing, you know, and we cut back to it for the second time and it's a joke. This is after the doc and then it turns off and you see Julia's reflection. Mm-hmm. You know, that's one of my favorite shots in that sequence. Or also, you know, it's her putting the ice cubes into her glass and the camera's sliding all the way across of her to find the door. That shot Zach had talked about at the very beginning, and we actually built the set to get that shot. We did it on stage just so we could have this moment. Because like you were saying, like Scream, it is very much telling the audience, no, don't trust the camera. We are trying to hide stuff from you.
I think that's what I was getting at with my first question is seriously, like, you're building a mystery by telling that you put it exactly right. Don't trust the camera. The camera's messing with you.
there's a maliciousness to the camera in it, and that it does show you information, but it's not going to help you. It's very much trying to enhance what is going on, kind of trying to put you in the shoes of the characters to be like, what was that? And the camera goes, when you hear that sound, it also wants to know what that was. And that sequence is fun. I mean, that's what's fun about making a horror movie is there's a scene where a character walks from a kitchen and looks in the door, and that's like 8 shots. And normally you're like, oh, we just pan, they walk over. It's like, oh no, we're going to slow it down. We're going to enjoy this moment. Bizarrely, the hardest shot out of that whole sequence is Julia opens a drawer and grabs pepper spray and brings it to her face. And it's like one of those like whip pan or whip tilts to her face. I think we did 40 takes.
Those are hard to get timed right.
Zach really is hard. Like the pepper spray would bounce around it was shockingly, we were like, oh, let's just get this insert and move on. And it took ages, just from the bizarre amount of small variables. But no, I mean, I think that is supposed to get you warmed up. It's a really fun way to reveal that witch has been written on her car. That's what that sequence is about. Yeah. And also to kind of prime the audience, and then, and also I think, when you cut to Julia in a car at night parked in front of that house, it's a time jump. Again, it's like, it's really fun to just sit there and it's night. And then again, the people next to me are like, oh no. And then the camera starts to move.
Oh my God. That was the scene that I had the most fun watching the audience. I don't want to ruin it for anyone, but yeah, she's in front of the house and then the door opens and it takes a second before you even see who's coming out. And then the whole way through the audience was like, no. And like, they were verbally freaking out in the second time I saw it. And it's like, yeah, it's because what's happening is inexplicable to you. And that's so brilliant the way, your movement, the camera movement feels like, okay, the camera guy knows something I don't. The camera knows something I don't. And it's like a character in this film and it's enjoying me not knowing stuff. I don't know. It's such a great use of technique.
Yeah, I think that I as an audience member like to feel like someone is guiding my journey, kind of like telling me when to be afraid, when not to be afraid, and using it against me. But when that sequence, that was the first thing. Again, one of the first things when I talked to Zach, I was like, I think this is a wonder, and he was like, you're lucky because it is a wonder. Originally it was going to be more complicated. The camera was going to wrap around Julia and like do like a full pivot. And then on the day, it just felt cleaner to just pan off and make it as simple as possible. Bizarrely enough, I was on the Zoom for that take, which was very stressful because usually you have the operator doing the Zoom at the same time. Mm-hmm. And it's also funny is that sequence gets a laugh. Like Zach was like, yeah, we pan over, there's a gasp, there's a shudder. This event happens, there's a laugh, everyone kind of like has a chuckle, and then there's a noise that happens and everyone drops back into dream. And it's great. And I didn't process that. And then the next time I saw it, I was like, yeah, there's a laugh in the middle of this. Somehow this is scary and funny at the same time. Which is kind of this weird amalgam of a movie. I feel very lucky to have been able to make something like this. I don't think you get to do, I don't know what type of genre this is, but something like this I think is rare.
I think horror comedy, quite often there's comedy because it's cheesy. There's no part of this is cheesy. This is just legitimately funny.
The laugh is what the audience has to have. Like you need a laugh there because it's so tense, and the laugh always comes after that tension. And if you don't let the audience have a moment of that, it just keeps bottling up. And I mean, the movie is kind of a slow burn and something, I know filmmakers who proudly say, I like to make slow burn movies. And it's like, the thing about a slow burn is the payoff has to be so much bigger than if it was just like a normally paced film. I don't even know what a normally paced film is, but you know what I'm saying? Like a movie, I mean, it's a great movie. Sinners is a great movie, but it is not a slow burn. It takes a while before you get to the vampire part, but you're with it the whole way. And it doesn't have to have, it's not a mystery, so it doesn't have to have this giant payoff. And this movie is a mystery, and so it forces you to be like the whole way through, I'm like, this better pay off, and it pays off so well, that to me is part, like, it's going to be the thing I'm going to, use when I talk to people who are like, I like a slow burn. I'm going to bring this movie up because to me, it's like a movie that like withholds. And then when it shows it to you, you're like, oh my God. And that's what it should be. And, it's interesting to hear, sort of your technique and your approach to how to do that. And I know you're saying it was all in the script, but I feel like your interpretation of that definitely is you are playing the audience like a fiddle, and I feel like that's something we don't get enough of because it's easy. I don't mean to be like this, but anyone can shoot like master coverage out. Like you don't need it, but like this film feels so handcrafted every scene of it.
Yeah, I mean, we try again. We wanted to be precious about the audience's time. So even like small scenes, there's a scene where Julia's waiting outside of the school to see Alex and follow him home, and we're like, well, how do we get her POV and get her making the choice to follow him and all of that? And we're like, oh, we'll start on a long end of a zoom, and we're just tracking with Alex, and a clever audience member will go, oh, this is Julia's POV. Someone else will be like, oh, it's Alex. And then we're panning with him and zooming out and like, wait, we're in the car. And then you reveal Julia in the foreground, and she's clocking Alex and you see her turn the ignition. And we're able to do all these beats in one shot. Not to be clever, but just to try to kind of, I think, visually have the audience constantly asking questions. It's more fun to present information and then context down the line for a lot of these sequences because you're jumping with the characters. One of my favorite laughs is Austin, on a phone call with his brother walking by these cars, and he's just on a phone call and he tries to unlock a car door and everyone laughs. And then he goes for the second door and then the third and the fourth. And you're like, oh, he's making an important phone call while also trying to like break into a vehicle to steal something. There's a playfulness to it. And then that sequence was actually, we shot both sides of it, but Zach just loved what Austin was doing and it stuck to the oneer. Just because it was more efficient and it kept the audience guessing like what is going to happen until he gets a lucky door at the end of the sequence. I think it's in the script, but we really like the mantra of like less is more and how can we tell as much as possible in one shot.
Well, that's great. I mean, are there? I feel like we've talked about the stuff that like really jumped out at us, but are there any big sequences or scenes or problems that you solved over the course of this that people haven't been asking you about that you think people would appreciate or would inspire people to in their own stuff?
They were all like silly logistical problems. Austin breaking into the house in the rain all had to be shot in 90 minutes, and that's probably 8 or 10 shots.
Yikes!
We had to wait for dusk to do it because it had to be overcast, and we had all the rain machines, and so we would go 3 hours before we would shoot it, and we actually would lay track and rehearse every sequence with Austin just to figure out what's his character doing and what is the camera doing and do we need to change the set dressing, all so that we're primed for that 90-minute window where we have to shoot a shot every 10 minutes, which is really exciting. But we ran out of light at the end of it. We started in the back of the house of him crawling up the side, kind of bumping into the the giant TV antenna. And we ended in the front, and you can actually see there's like a kicker of light on Austin's face from the streetlights turning on. The hard stuff in this movie is probably working with kids.
Yeah,
kids are great, but when you tell 17 kids to stand still in the basement, you end up doing a lot of.
I have one kid and I can't get him to stand still. So,
no, it was a blast to make, and I haven't worked as hard on anything as this film, just because it was also kind of like some other projects I've done. I was like, man, if we can pull this off, this could be really good. It could be great. It could be a really fun experience because so much happens in it. And I think to me, that's the most addictive thing about the movie is there's so much story. It's scary, it's fun, and there's some good action sequences, there's some good gore, but it's more, there's just so much that happens. Like I haven't had my brain as excited while reading a script like that in ages.
Yeah, but honestly, I feel like I almost never get that feeling watching a movie in the theater, and I go see as much as I can in the theater. And I'd say like that and Sinners this year are probably the two that were the most like resonant that I want to go back. I want to go see it back a third time. I'm like telling my other friends about it. I'm like, I'll go see this as many times as people will see it, because I think it's just such strong work. And when we finished watching it, actually, Ilya said to me, like, this is why I love movies. Like this
That's 100%
this reminds
true.
me of why movies are great.
It's the highest praise that I can give a movie. It's like when the lights came up in the theater, I was like, yeah, this is why I go to the movies. This experience, exactly this movie, which is sadly rare. It's rare to really get that, and it's so much fun. Yeah.
Well, and you're not a horror guy. I'll go see every horror movie.
Has that feeling when the lights come up. They don't. You kind of go, okay, great. Going on with my life now. This movie sits with you in a good way. It sits with you because you feel like you just enjoyed a piece of art. You enjoyed something that surprised you and didn't, answer all the questions, and you don't want it to. You want it to, have this experience. And I'm glad that you can see it a couple of times, Ben, over and over again. I could probably see it again, but I wonder, so many movies, you can't get that magic back the first time. You can't have that experience again.
Well, I feel like the second time you see a movie, you're deconstructing it, like you're looking at the technique, or the moments that are coming up. I mean, I'm not exaggerating when I say the first time I saw it, like, until a certain point in the movie, which you both know what point that is, I was like, I have zero idea of where this is going. I'm completely lost. I'm compelled. I want to know, because the mystery at the center of it is so compelling. But I'm like, I have you guys stripped away my ability to second guess your next move. And I could only compare that, like Ty West does that in some of his movies, like House of the Devil. I got completely, like, I was like, okay, my brain gave up. I'm going to stop even trying to guess what happens next. And that movie was because it was the slowest of slow burns. And it was more just because, like, okay, they're not going to tell me, but like each new piece of information is a clue, but I don't know how it's going to come together. And then it comes together.
You know what, Larkin, I'm so glad that you are witness to just Ben and I talking during your interview, and us going back and forth about how much we love this movie. But it's really, really true. They're like this. It's high praise. Probably the best horror film I've seen this year. Probably one of the best films I've seen this year. So much fun to watch. I think people are going to talk about this for a very, very long time, which is great.
Yep.
So all the hard work and all the, strife and that you underwent for it, I think certainly it paid off. It paid off in something, slightly magical, which I have a hard, I don't always equate with a horror film, but damn, it's like, this is great. It's really great. And I'm glad that it's selling out theaters, and I'm glad that it's getting such great reviews. I'm glad that, all the stuff is coming towards you for this. So phenomenal. And you deserve a ton of credit. You and Zach both, crafted a thing that is so well put together. It's phenomenal.
Well, thanks. I'm very proud of it. And we worked really hard to try to get it to where it is now. It was I think everyone believed in it. Some movies you're like, I hope it works. This one, we were kind of how we were making it, like, it has to work. It's too hard to make for it to not be good. And it was the first time I saw it, and the last time I saw it in theaters, it was like, oh, I hope I get to make something like it again. I'm afraid I never will, because it felt so unique. It's hard.
There'll be pressure for weapons too if it keeps going the way it's going. Yeah. So
Auntie is thrown for that one. Well, cool. So we've used up enough of your time. But before we go, where can people find you online if they want to check out more of your work, or if you're on social media and they can interact? Obviously, if you're hearing the sound of my voice and you haven't seen Weapons, go see Weapons in a theater.
Yeah. Go see it with the crowd if you can. It's the ending 10 minutes with the crowd is
so good.
It's a good time. Laughs, screams, all at the same time. It's
jaw-droppingly great. Yeah.
I'm on. I have a website that has a lot of my old work. I have not updated it in years. LarkinSeiple.com, and I'm on Instagram under the name Larks with 3 S's, because 1 S and 2 S was taken. So that's where I am.
Nice. We'll put links over at our official website, camnoir.com. Larkin, this has been such a great conversation. Thanks so much for being on the show.
Yeah. And congratulations on making just a great piece of work.
Awesome. Thanks so much for having me.
All right, that was Larkin Seiple. Larkin, hey, thank you so much for being on the show. It was great to chat again, and looking forward to having you back after the next one.
I'm always a little starstruck when I talk to Larkin. He just does such kick-ass work.
I like how Larkin is just so perpetually relaxed. He just seems like, he's always relaxed.
He seems pretty zen. Cool guy.
And now, short ends.
All right, so Ben, it is our short end time of the show. It's the time we talk about our pet obsessions. What is your pet obsession this week?
Well, I want to, before I get into my real thing, I have kind of a twofer here. The first part is sad, and it's the death of filmmaker Scott Spiegel, who is, although he is not a household name, he has been instrumental in the careers of a couple of humongous filmmakers, including Quentin Tarantino, who I believe crashed at his place in Hollywood for some time, and also Sam Raimi, who he started out with. And he's part of the group of people that includes like Sam Raimi and Bruce Campbell and Rob Tappert, and they all kind of started out together. And I have a personal remembrance. I never met him in person, unfortunately, but I'd always hoped that my path would cross his, because when I was in high school, I wrote a letter to the editor of Fangoria that they ran about a little movie that he co-wrote called Evil Dead 2. He was the co-writer of Evil Dead 2. Yeah. And he sent me a postcard. And, back when I was 16, and he just seemed like the coolest guy. I would always run into people who knew him, and I thought, it's kind of inevitable I'll run across him and I'll tell him about the postcard that he sent me and how much it meant to me, yada yada. If you look him up, he's like one of those people who never like fully broke out as his own. He made a bunch of movies. He did direct a bunch of movies, but he never like had a giant mainstream hit. He made a really kick-ass horror movie set in a grocery store called Intruder that might have been a partial inspiration for something that I might have worked on some time ago. No, he's freaking amazing guy. As far as I know, everyone I know who ever met him thought he was the coolest. He was not online, or I would have reached out to him at some point. And so in order to actually meet him, you'd have to like be in the room with him, which I admire, but also, if he was on LinkedIn or something, I certainly would have added him and started up a conversation. Rest in peace, Scott Spiegel. He was way too young to have passed away. My main short end, though, is about a podcast, the Business, which we've talked about here with Matt Bellamy. And on September the 1st, they released an episode where he interviewed Adam Aron, the CEO of AMC Theaters. And I would encourage anyone hearing my voice to first of all, subscribe to The Business. It's a great podcast. But secondly, listen to this interview. He did it as a live
The Business or The Town?
On The Town. What did I say?
The Business.
Sorry, the Business is another one that he's on.
It's another great one, but yeah, exactly. It's two different podcasts, yeah.
So yes, I would encourage anyone to go to The Town and subscribe to The Town. Great podcast, and I would listen to this. I'm always running my yap about how important I think the theatrical experience is, and AMC Theaters is the biggest movie chain in the world, and he's kind of got more power than anyone else. But Matt Bellamy really hits him with some hard-hitting questions, like about why so many ads, why so much pre-show, why not lower the prices during the week more than you already are. And it's a spirited, friendly, but somewhat combative conversation. And I walked away having a much better idea of like where theatrical is going. I don't want to ruin it for everyone, but like they're trying a lot of exotic things. They're trying to get more IMAX screens up. They are trying to get sports simulcast. Like I was thinking about it, like, because I go to the movies a lot, and the theaters are often kind of a ghost town in the middle of the week. And it's like, why don't they show like the Oscars in a movie theater? I'd pay to go see that. Like, I think it might be cool. Or why don't they show the Super Bowl? And I think that a lot of this has to do with just licensing deals and how hard it is to do it. But like what they're doing to kind of combat the fact that post-COVID, people don't go to the movie theater as much as they used to. They're trying to coax people back with comfier seats, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But like, listen to this podcast. Listen to kind of the spin that the CEO of AMC Theaters gives us. He's very open in a weird way. Like he's very he's very forthcoming with information in a way that you might imagine he would not be. And I highly recommend it. Check it out.
It sounds awesome. I'd totally check that out. In fact, I know what I'll be I know what I'll be listening to later.
All right, so Ilya, what is your fascination of this week?
Well, it's definitely fascination because you and I, when we went to go see Weapons, saw the trailer for this movie called Lurker, and I remember saying, I don't know if that's really for me when I saw it, but I have a connection to Lurker in that Lurker went and shot inside of our store hot red cameras. So
now you want it to succeed.
Yeah, well, naturally I want it to succeed. I want Alex Russell, the director and writer and producer of it, to be a huge success, and I want everyone to see how cool hot red cameras look.
Now we got to get them on the show. It's got to be a success so we can get them on the podcast and then ask them about shooting at Hot Rod. Oh my God!
As a matter of fact, we won't talk to them about anything else except for how great that location was and how that location completely makes the movie.
Snake is going to eat its tail. Eat that tail, Snake.
I think they were at Hot Rod for like 3 hours. I think it was like, it's a very like inconsequential sort of like moment in the movie, but I wasn't going to bring it up or say anything at all until somebody I knew went ahead and saw the movie and said, "Hey, just sending you this note. Was Hot Rod Cameras a location for Lurker?" And then I had to say, yes, absolutely it was. I didn't know anyone would like, I thought it could all be in close-ups. We got the pages of what they were talking about. So like, I didn't even know if we'd really end up in the movie, but clearly enough that Sherwin, who, sent me the message, called it out and said, hey, is this true? And I had to reply, yes. Yes, it is.
I have to say that trailer has me very intrigued because they're making some very specific choices that feel extraordinarily intentional. And I want to understand why they are doing that based on the trailer.
Yeah, it's really interesting. It's definitely a very stylized look. And so I'm curious about that. I don't know how they shot it. And maybe we should get them on the show and actually ask some questions. But I think probably I have to go see it. And it's in the theaters right now, so I have to go see it in the theaters. And I am pretty sure.
I didn't realize it was out already.
Oh, yeah, it's out. That's where Sherwin saw it. And he saw it in the theater and sent me a message, I guess, right afterwards saying, is that Hot Rod Cameras? So sure enough, Lurker, which is, I guess, in theaters, certainly in selected cities, possibly wide. I'll have to find out. But we'll put a link to it on the show notes over at camnoir.com.
Amazing.
Yep. So, Ben, that's it. It was a short and sweet episode this week, I think. Well, we did talk to Larkin for quite a while, so maybe not that incredibly
short and sweet for us.
Short and sweet for us. Where can people find you if they want to get in touch?
You can find me at benrock.com. That's the best place. And maybe later today at the Genius Bar at my local Mac store because I'm having a problem with the computer. But generally, benrock.com. You can, check out my reel, check out my stuff. I wish I could figure out how to put together a reel of audio because like the last 2 projects and probably an upcoming project that I'm doing are all audio. No one has audio reels.
Yeah, that's not true. VO artists have audio reels.
Yeah, so but VO directors, it's I'm not directing voiceover. It's not like come on down to Holler Honda kind of thing. It's like,
come on down.
It's like a director, like directing a movie, but with no pictures, which is antithetical to 100% of what we talk about on here, but it's all audio.
Well, could you do like a regular reel and then just omit the visual portion of it and just include the audio? Yeah.
Maybe I'll just get a shot of a flickering candle and just have that go up for the audio. Anyway, so yeah, check me out, benrock.com. Ilya, where can people find you? Stop talking about me. All right, let's go. Where can people find you?
Can find me at Hot Rod Cameras, hotrodcameras.com, or LinkedIn this week. A couple of people found me on LinkedIn. Ben, we have to thank fewer people this week. Who do we have to thank? Who made this show possible?
Well, we have to thank fewer people, but doing more jobs. So Alana Cody is editing this episode.
Double duty. Yeah, that's right.
And is also our, long-suffering producer.
Suffering? Really? Do you think we make her suffer?
No, I hope not. I think all of if we're all in it for the money, man. No, I mean, like if we didn't enjoy what we were doing, we wouldn't be doing it. So hopefully she's having fun editing it because we had to say goodbye to our previous editor, Charlie Nix, who has moved on to a better life at a farm upstate. But with Alana editing, I just thank you so much for all the work you do, Alana. And then we got to thank Kays Alatrakshi, who composed every scrap of music that Alana chooses to use in this episode. And you can check him out at musicbykays.com, or you can go to his YouTube channel, which is Kays Labs at YouTube, and watch him fix synthesizers.
Indeed. Definitely go watch Kays. All right, Ben, that does it for this episode. You want to take us out?
Thanks for tuning in.
Perfect.
This has been the Cinematography Podcast, presented by Hot Rod Cameras. Find your next camera, lens, or accessory on the web at hotrodcameras.com. Don't forget to subscribe to our show on iTunes and connect with us on Facebook and Twitter. Thanks for listening.